Hey beautifuls, Hannah from Reality Awareness here. Welcome. This is a pretty interesting energy update. I've got a lot I wanted to say. There was a lot I wanted to put in the title, and I just put that this covers all the current world events because, yeah, there's a lot to talk about here, right? So this is covering all the world events, what this even has to do with the prediction that I had around the Middle East, Turkey, and the catastrophic events that were coming. And in that energy update that prediction back in January, I had mentioned about April, May is when it would kind of what I was showing in that prediction back then, which made me spur on and share it, is that Turkey, the country, would literally drop into the ocean, and then someone had actually shared with me the tectonic plates. Actually, just there's two tectonic plates. This is only just hanging on ultimately, and I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but with this energy update, what I'm really feeling called to share with you is what I've been showing since being out here in the Outback. Hey Tina. Plus the reason why, not just the reason why I've been drawn here, but the connection between all these current world events. There's a part of me that doesn't even want to voice that, right? So the stuff going on between the coronavirus, 5G, the reason people are feeling like they're feeling, the catastrophic events, the floods, all the flood predictions that, I even got it, back in August last year, I'm like, there's floods coming. Like, there's like a lot of water coming, like floods. And then all the fires happened, and I was like, I don't know what that's about, right? And now we look at it and I'm like, oh, and there's just more pieces that I want to put together of this puzzle that I really feel called to share with you right now. And then plus my vulnerable share, why I was even drawn here, what this has to do with my life purpose, and how all of that is intertwined as well, right? So, hey Sarah, I would love for you guys to let me know how you're feeling, and if you're feeling good, or how's the energies going for you. It's been very up and down energy for a lot of people. Lots of people been bawling their eyes out crying. A lot of people been dismantling their life and then remodeling it, so to speak, in a total different way. So let me just share this as always, and I shall be super present with this. So yeah, there's just a lot that I want to put together, lots of different things that I've been showing, and obviously feeling called to share about this. Plus the star beings that are coming through that were really strong, like, was it 2 days ago? I think 2 nights ago. It was really strong, and I thought it was just me, and then I had all these messages from people saying, and I'm like, okay. I know actually in one of the Tuesday tarot cards, one of the messages that were coming through was really about what was it, tapping into being open to a different spirit guide that you've never really connected with. There's someone wanting to come through, and that was the one that I had a lot of messages about. It was a star being. I call them star beings. You could call them ETs, aliens, whatever, but for me, they're whether it's the Pleiadians or, Arcturians, whoever, for me, they're star beings. So I just wanted to define that terminology there. Feeling like I'm on a crazy roller coaster. Yeah, a lot of people have been feeling that. So Kirsty said, experience super fatigue and a lot of reality wake-ups. I feel like this has been a big week. Okay, cool. I really want to speak to that fatigue. And I'm just conscious don't want this phone to overheat. It should be right because it's quite cool here this morning. So if it drops out, it's probably overheated, but it should be okay. So the fatigue, I've been really tired too, and I just assumed that this is a train going past. I assumed that it was I've been processing a lot of stuff being back here, big reality, drop-in shifts, changes, you know what I mean? So I just assumed that was me processing stuff. And I will just share, I guess, a little bit, obviously this is all intertwined with my personal vulnerable share as well, that I have been quite tired. at peak times. So I'm really conscious around that 11 to 1 p.m. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I get quite tired, but I'm also conscious in a traditional Chinese medicine that's to do with the heart, like the physical heart. So I usually have a nap or lie down at least around that time for half an hour. So I'm up at 4 or 5 every morning. So it kind of, just helps to revive me. Now, speaking about the heart chakra, speaking about the physical heart, speaking about 5G, and speaking about the coronavirus. Now, I don't really believe in this stuff that's going on, right? Like, it's a bit like get the flu vaccine or get the HPV, like, I don't buy into the fear of it, okay? So I just want to point that out first, okay? So Kirsty says, seeing the truth in a lot of things that are happening. Yes, lots of truth, reality wake-ups happening, yeah? So Sarah says, I feel great lately, very peaceful and calm. Yay! So the other thing here, just on that, is that we have to remember that there's a big power shift going on the planet. And, as I said the other day, it's really like Ularu's been activated, shifted, the power has shifted, right? Now, when we keep that in mind, okay, everything that is happening now, and, and like I always say, I don't follow the news, I don't watch it, I'm like, I've got other things to create in the world, right? Literally. And focus is everything too, by the way, guys. Now, the other piece to that is that I trust, and I've always been like this since I stopped watching the news back in 2005, that spirit shows me what I need to see. Now, I saw someone talk about the coronavirus, and I just scanned through all the comments because I felt called to. Now, it was interesting, obviously, because a lot of other people... Dawn, leave... Sorry, my cats. Hang on a second. Dawn, leave Alex alone. Hey, not okay. Not okay. Dawn likes to play tag with the bird at times. So, and so I saw all these comments, right? I was just flicking through them, and it was just interesting, some of the comments, and I started to get all this intuitive information about what I was seeing. And there was all this kind of like fighting going on in the comments, right? Around people saying the coronavirus is only in places where 5G is or isn't. I wasn't sure. I think it was where it is. Now, some people were saying that coronavirus is a cover up for the 5G stuff. And I didn't know, and I didn't even know much about the 5G stuff. I just don't, I'm just not interested in focusing on, right? In a way, right? I'm conscious of it, but I'm not like, yeah, I've got other things to focus on, right? But I always get shown what I need to see when I need to see it. Now, the other piece to that is that, I don't know, it was interesting to me because I saw something around, like, like people dropping dead in the streets from the coronavirus, and other people were commenting and saying, no, that's from 5G. And then someone had shared in there that 5G, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but it's something around 5G actually does something to the molecular structure or the cell of the oxygen and spins it or something. So it prohibits, it stops the oxygen getting into the hemoglobin blood cell, right? So it's stopping the oxygen getting into the blood cell. Now, all this was, like just kind of, came to my awareness. I was like, this is so interesting, right? Because when we look at, and this is what I always harped on about, like all last year, I was like, guys, 5G, 5D, right? 5G, 5-dimensional. 5-dimensional. We're moving out of the 3D consciousness into 5-dimensional consciousness, right? 5D is the heart chakra. 5G, look what that's like, do you know what I mean? And as I always say, this is the contradictory world we live in. We live in a world on the continuum and on extremes. There is always one to the other. And we look at 5-dimensional consciousness and we look at, the 5G consciousness, whatever, right? When we look at that scale, it's a line, and at one end is this and at one end is this. Like, they're always going to be in play. Like, first there was 3G, and then there was 4G, and now there's 5G. Like, It's a thing, right? There's 3-dimensional conscious, like, do you know what I mean? And so when we really look at that aspect, and then we look at the fatigue and the tiredness, right? And then the other piece I really want to share to this is the heart, right? And so when you are feeling fatigued and tired, there's a couple of things here, okay? Number one, what have you been eating? Yeah? And I'm actually going to, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to walk with this because I can see and feel that it's getting hot. I'm gonna go somewhere else. So when we look at the 5G consciousness and we look at 5D, like they're on the same scale, right? They're on the same scale. And I'm just gonna go in here behind a tree. This is the orchard. So I'm just gonna find, okay, cool. All right. Okay, so when we look at that scale, okay, when we look at the 5D, the 5G, like the 5th dimensional, right, it's the heart chakra. Now, when I've been on this journey of food and blood and like my blood wasn't storing iron, if you guys have followed me for a while, you'd know about this. Please send me a message if you'd like the video and all that stuff. I'm not going into that right now. But the thing is that, oh, you have to tell me if it's windy. I should have put my earphones in. Okay, so if the thing that I found out when I was going through all this blood, you know, journey and everything, what I actually discovered is that my blood, even though like the iron and everything was an issue, the main key thing was that the oxygen wasn't actually getting into the cells of my blood. Like it wasn't actually traveling in there. It wasn't actually being able to get into there. And that's what was making me tired, because the lack of oxygen, we're going to starve, right? Starve literally of energy. Like, do you know what I mean? Like oxygen is everything. So when we put all those pieces together, it's kind of interesting to me, okay? And it's also kind of interesting to me that I just happened to find out about this oxygen stuff in my blood, and I've been drawn to oxygen therapy, right? So I guess I'm just sharing this because I know there's a lot of people who do go into fear. And the other piece about the turkey prediction that I shared, and you know, at the start of the year, right? I'm not talking about anemia, no, right? Not specifically for myself. It might have some relevance for you guys with anemia, right? So for me, it's not that my blood wasn't absorbing iron, like I was absorbing it, right? It wasn't anemia. It was that my cells weren't storing storing iron. So in our cells, right, we absorb the iron and our body uses it. But our cells also store a backup. So if we get depleted in iron, it draws from the storage of what we've got in our cells. Does that make sense? And mine was like, my storage was empty. Like it wasn't storing iron. And I was like, what the F is going on here? Like I absorb it and my body uses it straight away. Like, and that's when if there wasn't anything else, like if I wasn't eating enough iron, I was getting that depleted and tired instantly because my body had nothing to draw on. Do you know what I mean? So yes, it is oranges behind me. It is. They're all a bit, because the drought's really bad out here. But yeah, everything's on depletion, right? So interesting. So I just felt really called to share this, right? And then the other aspect that I want to share is, you know, in the prediction that I did in January for, you know, if you guys watch that, right? So it's like Turkey and all the Middle East, like all this stuff was going on. If you haven't watched that, please send me a message and I'll share it, because that's a whole other thing in itself again. But when I intuitively got the dates about what was going on, it was April, May, like the end of April, May. Okay. And that was, okay, so I just need to speak to this. Janae is saying, I don't store iron either. I put it down to something genetic. No, it's not genetic. Dana, interesting, I'm anemic. Are you taking supplements? No, I'm not taking supplements. Nope. Purely food. Yeah, I rarely take supplements, to be honest. Like, I don't know, I prefer to use foods, natural sources, right? Danae, if you haven't watched that video that I spoke about, all that food stuff, can you please send me a message and I'll send you the link to watch it, because I could go into it on this live stream, but I want to keep on point in this live stream, because it's not genetic. It's the whole vegan, vegetarian, raw food stuff, which I fully believe in, but I was doing it for too long that my body got depleted, right? Especially because I've had a child. So yeah, So, again, whole nother, I could talk about that for ages. So there's a whole other live stream on that. There's a few actually. So anyway, let me bring back to the prediction in January, and I intuitively got the dates around April, end of April, May, because people are like, when's that going to happen, right? If the whole leg of turkey actually does drop out of the earth type thing. And I intuitively got April, end of April, May. I also feel there's something kind of middle March, end of March, right? Now, the piece that I want to share about this, it was so interesting to me when I was intuitively looking at all those comments. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And then I put all those pieces together with the 5G and the heart and the oxygen and the lungs, right? And the starvation of oxygen. Now, when we look at the starvation of oxygen and what keeps life, this is going deep into science, right? Looking at what keeps life alive on the planet, what keeps, if we go out of our atmosphere, we need the oxygen, do you know what I mean? It goes deep, right? This goes really, really deep, yeah? Goes deep back to the creation stuff. And when I was going through the comments, someone had said to me, someone had mentioned all these different, there was some, not pharmaceutical science guy, there was some guy that someone recommended, some Russian scientific pharmaceutical type guy who's covering all of this corona stuff, right? And I didn't look on his stuff, but what this person had commented saying, it was kind of interesting to me. And they said that he had said that it's going to peak, the coronavirus is going to peak, so it's not even at its peak yet, it's going to peak in April, May. And I was like, ooh, this is kind of interesting. I'm like, they're the dates that I received about turkey dropping out from the earth. Now, as I'd shared in that original prediction, turkey dropping out from, dropping into the ocean, if you can imagine that actually happening, that would cause a catastrophic event, the waves from the ocean, the whole shift underneath, that would affect the whole world ultimately, right? And what was interesting to me, that someone had mentioned that, and when we put all these pieces of the puzzle together, it's literally whether turkey drops out. I don't really think turkey's going to drop out. I'd be so surprised if it does, right? But the energy change, the catastrophic event from that happening energetically, I don't feel physically, I don't feel like that's going to happen. But I feel like something as big as that is going to happen that's really going to rock the earth, rock humanity. And when we look at what's building up and peaking with the coronavirus, and the other reason that I'm sharing this is because this trip, and this taps into me getting really vulnerable about why I'm even here in the first place, is that you guys will be like, well, duh, Hannah, we knew that, right? I've been building this business, I've been giving my all, and I got to a point where I felt really stuck in the holding patterns. You guys would have read it all already, right? And when, I've been here, it's just okay, everything, all these routines and these habitual routines that I was stuck in and felt like I couldn't break out of, or there's always a reason, right? And this trip is showing me it's time to kick into gear of my life purpose. And you guys be like, well, you're living your life purpose. And I'm like, no, I wasn't. I mean, living it's total watered down, 1% of it, version, right? And so, moving into this, it's kind of coming back to that, putting self as priority. And I'm sharing this because this is our heart, and we feel depleted in our heart. We feel starved of oxygen. What I'm always carrying on about, oxygen mask first, guys. We need to tend to ourselves first, right? So when we look at, placing that on ourselves first, if there's any if there's ever been a time to like take like utter control of your health and your life, it's now, right? If these catastrophic events are coming, what do I always say? We get shown these things intuitively so we can prepare for them. Yeah? Not out of fear, but out of preparation. Now, as a healer, as a sensitive, as an intuitive, you need to be trusting these messages. Again, not out of fear. Like, okay, cool. If there was no food or water around for a few months because of, thing, like there's already been like huge recalls of food and supermarkets and all this sort of stuff, right? Like the world's coming to a halt. Maybe that's what it is. The world is coming to a halt, like big time. Yeah. So it's kind of really interesting when we're like, really coming back to our roots. Everybody's talking about, okay, the new earth and all of this. Yeah. If we are coming back to the new earth, how do you survive? How do you get through without water out of the tap, without food at the local shop? Like, do you know what I mean? Like I feel like, we're almost getting an opportunity to return to that before it happens. As a healer, as an intuitive, like, who are the people that people come to when there is a catastrophic event? Yeah, and this steps into if you are having trouble finding a job and you have a gift and you have an intuitive ability and you're not creating yourself to be the leader in that, in your country, in your environment, in your following, in all of that. Like, guys, like this is the new earth stepping in. Like, okay, let me reframe it. If the new earth was happening, would you be looking at the same job? If you're like, no, well, I would be a healer too. It's like, well, why are you doing anything about that now? Because we're getting this warning now. Like, maybe nothing's really going to happen in April, May. But I've been hearing it from several sources now. And I'm like, wow, I intuitively got that message in January about a big catastrophic event. I didn't say it's going to peak. I said that would happen then, right? When I got asked the question and someone said, when's it going to happen? And I'm like, and this is what dropped in. So this is really, really important to remember and to tap into, start taking back your power, because the Uluru activation was us taking our power back. All the floods and all the, floods and, like all the water, right? Because there's water flooding around the planet. It's not just here in Australia. There's Brazil. There's, I think it was like the UK or somewhere, right? Someone mentioned to me. And I'm just like, this is the floods, this is the water. And what is water? Water is emotions. What is water? Water is the subconscious. What is the ocean? It's the subconscious. And the subconscious is shifting. Yeah, big time. So Vincent says, may I have a symbolic meaning? What does Turkey represent? The Muslim world, dictatorship? Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I've been questioning that as well. I'm like, what is the symbology? Like for myself, I'm not sure how long you've been following me for, but I've actually been like watching this series about the history of Islam and like, the Muslim, like just like the whole culture, right? And I've like never been drawn to that. Yeah, we have flooding in the UK, exactly, right? And it's kind of interesting to me because, this has been going on for months. If you're in my Trust Intuition tribe, you'll be hearing me talk about it, but it's actually been drawn to, like learning about it, like, and I'm not religious, but I've just been like enthralled and I've been questioning. I'm like, what is this about? Like, what does this mean? Why am I being shown this? You know what I mean? Like, I'm always getting this thing. Now, as I've gone through this whole phase and everything, like I don't know. And someone else had said to me as well, like there was this book written, credit goes to the book, of course. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to, have a look. Just my arm's getting sore. Didn't really plan this live stream probably, did I? So when someone had written a book about all the religions in the world, if they were going to join one religion, like, and they went and like, I don't know, researched and lived maybe, I don't know, it's a book written about it. This guy had gone and researched all the religions and he was like, if there was a religion I was going to choose to join, it would be the Islam world. And I was just like, it would be becoming a Muslim. And I was like, someone had told me that there's a book written about it all. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting, right? I always get told what I need to hear, piecing all this intuitive stuff together, right? And with this, and obviously, like I said, I've been questioning it. What is this about? Why am I so enthralled with this? And then someone saying that, and I'm like, for me personally, when I've learned about Islam, I'm like, I see why they said that. Because, you know, and I've written this ages ago, like, every culture has good and bad people or something like that. You know, there's good and bad in every single culture. Like, you know, in any religion, there's good and bad people. Like, it's just a thing, you know what I mean? Like, people live by the religion, but they don't live by the religion. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's, you know, I think you know what I mean, right? So when we look at this, you asked me the symbology of Turkey and like Muslim, and you know, and for me, like all these pieces of puzzle around, you know, Saudi Arabia and is that Mecca? It's not called Mecca these days, I don't think. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'd have to double check that. Don't have my computer research right this second. Or maybe it is still there called that. But that's like the birth of the world. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, why is Christianity, Islam, and what's the other one? There's something else. They're all in that region. Like, they're all born of that region, right? And when I've been discovering all of this, I'm also lapis lazuli, and lapis lazuli is found like birthed, you know, in Afghanistan mainly. And again, it's all that area. And lapis lazuli is the truth. It's cutting through the truth. Lapis lazuli's purpose is realization. It's realization of the truth. We cut through to the truth. And all these pieces, and I'm like, this is so interesting. So when we look at the birthplace of the world, right? Now, some people would say, actually, it's Africa. The Africans are the oldest people on the planet, right? Yeah, it's all pretty close to the Middle East and all this birthplace, you know? So it's like, well, in my like thing, it's like, well, if Africa was the first birthplace of the human race, and then right next door is where all these religions, this is where the separation started, right? In my opinion. Does that make sense? Right? Birthplace of the world, Africans, of humanity, I should say. And then just next door, Egypt, all that area is where all these religions, the three major religions of the world, maybe I'm not correct about that, that was where that was born, right? And all this energy, we just had the eclipse back in December, coming right through Saudi Arabia there, right? For me personally, I feel like it's some sort of wake up to the truth. You know what I mean? Like they say the coronavirus is going to peak in April, May, right? I was like, that's so interesting. And I got the whole Turkey thing and I'm like, okay, realization of the truth. Okay, truth, wake up. I don't know what's going to shock the world, right? Nothing shocks people more than the truth, right? What does people mostly don't want to freaking face is the truth, right? The truth of reality. How interesting, right? So when we look at all of those pieces, it's kind of like when you say, what is the symbolism of Turkey and, you know, is it Muslim world? You know, I feel like it's all of that. Because for me personally, like, you know, and I understand watching a particular show based on the history of a country and their religion is obviously going to favor their religion. However, when I really look at like, oh, there's some core truths in that religion, that's for sure. Like for me personally, I'm just like, oh my God, I so resonate with that. Like, do you know what I mean? About the truth and having, you know, like basically love and respect for all other religions. Like they're not trying to convert you. They're like, okay, you can practice your own religion. Like we have respect for that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, maybe other religions do too, but I don't know, whatever, right? It's kind of interesting. So when we look at all those pieces, do you know what I mean? And there was something else I was just going to share about that. Maybe it'll come back to me. So Terry says, I've only just got here. What I've heard so far, I couldn't agree with you more. We're going to go full circle, I believe. Yeah, I feel like it's quite interesting that this is all going to peak, right? Now, for me personally, as you guys know, like coming out here, you know, of like the fuel and the whole thing. And I'm like, you know, because obviously I've been questioning that. I've been doubting myself, you know, there's been so much shame. I'm like, what the fuck did I come here, you know, and like this whole thing of like, why was those signs so strong for me? And for me personally, like, you know, I'm heading back soon, but I've got like this full plan and I'm like, you know what? I think that me getting that fuel and just being in that space, I'm like, intuitively, I'm not going to deny that, you know, and I'm like, I'm an organized person most of the time. I'm a Virgo and I like being organized. I like being prepared. And I also like being able to take care of myself, right? So it's like looking at all those aspects in, you know, like if the world did stop for 6 months, can you survive, right? If the local shops, if the, you know, do you know what I mean? Like it's a thing, right? Like there's already stuff being pulled off the shelves. There's already supermarkets and, you know, Europe being, you know, gutted, like, you know what I mean? Like it's not something to ignore, right? It's not something to go into fear about. It's something to empower yourself about. and, you know, prepare for that, you know, get as healthy as you can, like get fit and healthy. Like, you know, can you survive without food and water for how long? You know, like where's your fasting at? You know what I mean? Like fasting is healthy. Like we can survive without food. Can we survive without water? Have you got water? Like, do you know what I mean? And again, it's not about fear, and maybe that will never happen, but there's peak times coming, right? And we're living in a world of peak change, in being able to, you know, shift the consciousness of humanity. There's going to be some hard smack in the face truths, right? Most people don't like the truth, and it can be very shocking. And then people go into anger and regret and distrust, and then they come into the realization of the truth, and then they really tap into, well, who can I trust, right? All right, I feel like there was something else I wanted to say, but I think I've covered it. The floods, the water. Oh, yes, thank you. I knew there was something else. Okay, so this is like, I was like, this is so interesting. So you know how just like, like there's oranges and stuff, but everything is a drought. Like you guys seen like how dry it is. I mean, like it's the middle of Australia. Everybody knows it's dry, but there's specifically been a drought for the past 10 years. As I shared the other day on live stream or whenever, there's literally like a shift in the cycles at the moment, right? Like from, I forget the words, is like El Nino to El whatever. Like I think it's about a 10-year cycle. It's shifting again, or is it shorter than that? I don't know, right? We go through a dry spell and then we go through a wet spell. Like it's shifting and we're in a wet spell. Now, I feel personally, there was another thing. Okay, cool. 2 more things. So, you know how we've just had the fires, right? The Amazon and then Australia, and all the animals left. Yesterday when I was walking back down to our cabin yesterday, I got the message, because there's all kangaroos here, and all the koalas dropped in. Yeah. And it was interesting to me because we've just had all the fires, the Amazon and stuff. And actually it was like, I think it must have been yesterday too, because I don't know, intuitively question all these things, right? And this dry, barren land, because the way that I drove here, 1,600 kilometers driving, went like it's all dry creeks, and we're driving over dry creeks and over, you know, like all the, bridges in just dry creeks, and they're just full of gum trees and they're just dry, right? And as I was driving, I could see them like full gushing of water, like they're empty, but as I'm driving over them, and it wasn't like, oh, let's visualize lots of water here. It was just like I drove over and I saw it, and I'm like, I don't think we're coming home this way, right? And lo and behold, 70% of all of them, they're all flooded and all gushing water now. And I'm like, I freaking saw that. Yeah. Now, what's interesting to me is obviously all of this dropping in, and I don't know whatever question I asked, right? But I got the message and I'm like, really? I don't know about that, right? But then all these other things came back to mind. So I trust you let me know if it's too windy. When I was a kid, I would always come out here with my dad and we'd go back to where I was born and blah, blah, blah. And it was always green. Like it's really, I know there's like scrub and bush and stuff out there, but it's really dry, right? Whereas when I was a kid, it was lots of green, like just lots of, like it was green, like lots of foliage. It was green. It was really quite lush and green, right? Now that's what, 20, 30 years ago, right? Now, for me, the message I got, like with all the water, because at the moment in Australia, there's heaps of water coming across the Northern Territory, and that's all going to come down here. And this is why I feel like I'm getting the intuitive message to go, because I'm like, this is going to fill up soon, right? I'm like, there's rain coming. Dad's like, nah, it never rains here. And I'm like, there's rain coming, Dad. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, nah, anyway, we'll see. But, when we look at where the current now ex-tropical cyclone, as an Esther or something, has come across, there's lots of rain, and that will just come down, it rains up north and then it comes down, right? So I got the message that Australia is going to become as lush as the Amazon was before it burnt. And I'm like, nah, whatevers, right? Like that literally came in, like maybe not as tropical, I don't know, maybe, but green and lush like the Amazon. And I was like, I'm like, whatevers, because I've been questioning all the water, and I was like, well, everything's going to turn green. But then I got the message around, like as green as, like lush and green like the Amazon. And I'm like, yeah. Anyway, we shall see. But it's interesting to me because it always keeps coming back to Uluru for me. Like, do you know what I mean? I get all these messages and they're like, Uluru. Like, when we look at how much rain, even like underneath like Perth and WA, and I know we have storms, like we haven't had a proper wet season for a long time, right? And all this energy is shifting. Uluru is being activated, and when you look at the maps, guys, like, you know, maybe that will change shortly, I don't know, but currently, and I've been following it because I've been, you know, on this mission and driving and getting all these, you know, things, all these messages and the storms and the floods and stuff, right? Oh, that's really loud, right? That's just a train going past. Is it, you know, like where Uluru is obviously in the center of Australia, but there's cyclones all across the top. There's cyclones like both sides. It's like repeated pattern again, right? Like when I drove here 2 weeks ago, there was a cyclone over there and a cyclone over there, and now it's cyclones again, right? One's died off again. But the other piece of that is like Uluru's in the middle, and there's all these storms and water like all around, like even down, you know, like southwest WA, like, you know, through the Eyre Peninsula, like the Great Australian Bight, like it's all like storms, like, do you know what I mean? And so when we look at that, it's like there's this center, like Uluru, and then there's all this water around it, and we haven't had a wet season for a long time. When I was like 20-30 years ago when I was a kid, like it was so much more lusher and greener out here, and now all this rain's coming, and me getting the message around it's going to be as lush as the Amazon, and I'm like, and I mean, like, there's a part of me that somewhat believes that. Maybe not, like I said, you know, as thick and as jungly as the Amazon perhaps, right? But as green and lush, probably. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. Why? Because we're shifting into a whole new cycle, right? We've shifted out of the magnetic field of, you know, like this solar system. That magnetic field is gone, and we're shifting into a whole new energy space, right? Plus the solar plexus, the Uluru reactivation, and, you know, like what's going on right now on the planet. And okay, and so now the koalas, right? Like I said, the koalas dropped in yesterday, and how they all got wiped out. Now, remember I did the thing about why the koalas left, right? That they can, you know, or so many animals, right? Some ridiculous number of animals like got burnt in the fires and left the planet. And, you know, and I said back then, and so, you know, these predictions, like someone had said, I don't know, eons ago, that like humans would be wiped out, or there would be a huge wipe out of a big chunk of humans. I know it sounds so bad, right? But remember when all the animals just got burnt and wiped out recently, and I did that live stream, and I'm like, they can see what, you know, like, so they chose to leave because they can see what us humans are doing, whether or not, who knows, right? But when we look at that, the koalas, and when we look at what's happening with the coronavirus now, and how many people, you know, like apparently the death rate's not so bad or whatever. Apparently. I don't know, because I haven't really been following it, to be honest. But all this stuff, it's like, actually, it's only this thing. But, you know, they're about to announce that it's a global pandemic. Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, I'm just sharing, right? These are the messages coming through. These are all the pieces that have been shared to me. And I'm really, really curious, you know, and even, you know, when the Amazon was a light and then Australia was a light, I was like, that's an interesting connection. And for ages, I was like, why is it just these two massive countries? Well, I know there's bigger countries, but it's interesting to me. And then that message around Australia will be as lush as the Amazon was. And look at all the rain that's falling and continuing to fall. Like, it's not over yet, right? And I feel like it will also peak around April, May as well. So that's what I had to share. There's more of my personal stuff I wanted to share, but I think I might put that in a blog post. But I feel like this was really important to share. I was getting the message to share, so here I am sharing it. And I'm curious if you guys have got questions or how you feel listening to that, because I know it's a lot to take in. But I'm constantly getting messages and constantly like intuitively being shown things and putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Okay, and now the star beings want to say as well. around, like, and this is where I shared earlier, where if you're getting, like, there's beings there waiting to come in and help us, right? They're very different energy, as you guys probably know, working with the Pleiades stuff. They're very different energy if you've never really worked with the star beings before. Total different energy shift, vibration when you do work with them. But yeah, I just feel called to say, you know, like, open up to, you know, receiving different help. Oh, there was some kids movie, or is it Star Wars? I don't know, someone had shared to me, like, you have to go see this because, like, the world's in chaos, but actually we're not alone. There's people ready to help us. There's beings ready to help us, right? So if we're opening up, ready to receive their messages, their help, their energy frequency now, remember 5G, 5D, right? If we're tuning to 5D, 5G is not going to affect us. I always say that, right? So Janaea says, yeah, I've been getting the intuition to prepare too. Yeah, just be prepared, yeah? Be prepared, not out of fear, out of deep service to the divine and your life purpose and what that's calling you to step up and be the leader, the person who, you know, because there's a lot of us that know what foods to eat, what we can eat, what detoxes, how we can fast, how do we do that? Okay, so Amanda says, how do we prepare? Yeah, so Janaea says, I've also got friends who have got told 2020 will be a year of disaster and loss of lots of people and species. Yeah, it's so interesting, right? And that's why I feel like there's more coming. So Amanda says, how do we prepare? So, you know, for me personally, like, obviously I'm on the road at the moment. I'm not at home. Before I left home, because I get delivered to my house the spring water bottles, you know, like they're like the big 15 litre. Well, I'm in Australia, so I don't know if it's like overseas too, but we get the big bottles of spring water and they, you know, they're 15 litres and you tip them upside down and they sit on the dispenser thing. So I get those delivered to my home because I like drinking spring water. And I usually get 4 or 5 every fortnight, but I upped my order so that I've just got extra bottles there all the time. So that's just what I'm preparing with water. Now, obviously, an extra 3 bottles is not really going to last that much longer, right? But it's something extra. So how do we prepare? So depending on your diet and, you know, what you normally naturally eat, like there's a lot of things we can do with fasting and foods and, you know, like we can go a long time without food, water not so much. However, some people would beg to differ, but you have to be trained for that sort of stuff, right? However, it's also being conscious of what you're feeding, like in eating yourself, in a sense of like, are you listening to the fear and all the people saying all this stuff and buying into it and getting sucked into it? Or are you choosing to remember your power and how we are naturally attuned beings to the earth and that the food we can find anywhere? Like in the desert out here, there is food. You just have to know what to look for, right? Now, on a more sort of like practical level, when you talk about how do we prepare, well, you know, foods that don't go off, so like canned foods or that sort of thing. And people are like, I'm not eating canned food. I'm like, when there's nothing, you know, in the supermarkets for 6 months, what are you going to turn to, right? Do you know what I mean? So it's stuff like that. So just, you know, stocking up on extra bits and pieces like that would be things that I would, you know, kind of do. Like medical supplies, not necessarily like, you know, for me personally with my toe, right? I don't know if you guys have been following me, but I came back here, I freaking got a piece of like thing stuck like, you know, in my foot, piece of twig, right? And usually I'd feel it, but it was like on the top of my toe. I think that's why I didn't notice it so much. But anyway, because you know when you step on something, you know, right? Anyway, I ended up going to the hospital and she pulled it out in 2 seconds. I spent an hour trying to pull the freaking thing out. Anyway, because it was already a bit infected, which it never happens to me, it started healing as soon as the thing came out, right? It's only when it's in your body and your body's like, this is not meant to be in here, trying to get rid of it, yeah? Anyway, she ended up giving me an antibiotic cream and like a topical antibiotic cream. Now, I don't usually use stuff like that, but she ended up saying, don't just put it on there, you know, use a cotton bud and then you can, you know, use this cream for other, you know, things. And she rattled off all this stuff. so it's good for the family and for kids. She just kept pointing to my daughter. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay, cool. And I was like, actually, this is good for the medical kit. Do you know what I mean? Not in a like, oh, we're going to go into all this stuff in the planet. Like, that wasn't cross my mind. Like, I always carry a first aid kit, like quite a big one in the car. I always have, I not always have, ever since I had my daughter, I've always just had a medical kit, just the basic sort of stuff. So, just things like that, like if you did have to tend to yourself on the side of the road, for example, do you have the necessary things to do if you get something stuck in your eye? That's a basic medical kit, right? So things like that. For me, because I'm on the road and I got, driving, and I've never done this before, I got like a jerry can. And I've got a jerry can of fuel. In myself, my logical mind was like, there's not much fuel, Hannah. Like, what's the point? But my intuition was like, talk to Dad, get a jerry can, ask him about it, because I have no idea, right? And of course, Dad knows all this stuff. So, and I did, and I got an extra jerry can of fuel. And I'd even said to him, I was like, well, it's only like 16, 20 litres. It's not going to get me very far. And he's like, well, that's extra, 100 Ks. And I'm like, that's pretty far, in a sense, right? So, just things like that. I mean, ultimately, what would you need? Like candles, if there's no electricity, then what do you do? Jasmine? For example, at my house where I usually live, everything's run on electricity. So hot water, it's all electricity. I don't have gas. You know what I mean? So if, the electricity goes off, well, how am I going to cook? And it's like, wow, I've got this camp cooker, or do you know what I mean? Just things like if you were camping in the bush, what would you need? I don't know. How would you prepare? Maybe things like that, right? And then on an intuitive level, this is the most important thing. You want to talk about how to prepare? Do not buy into the fear of it. The fear is what makes us sick. Yeah? Fear is what makes us sick. And when we talk about Turkey and Islam and what that means, for me, with what I shared with you guys, how I said I really resonate with it, because there's some truth bombs in there. There is some absolute truth bombs in there. And I'm right at the end of the series at the moment. And they're tapping into more things about the will of, it's the will of their Alps, their soldiers, right? But it's really about the detachment of all the physical material aspects and our connection to the truth of all. So for them, for the Islam, it's Allah, yeah? For us, it's God, universe, whatever you put a label on it. For them, it's Allah. Allah is the only God or what have you. Sorry, the dogs are playing and the dust is flicking up. Oh my goodness, I'm going to get bowled over in a minute. It's like a German Shepherd and a Staffy running around. Okay, I'm just going to move over here. That would be better. I've never seen my German Shepherd play, and she's literally I don't know if you can see her. Oh, there we go. I've never seen her play like this, and she's now got friends with this Staffy that, I don't know if you can see. They're playing. Okay, sorry, distractions. Oh my goodness, Jazz, stop. Dust is going everywhere. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh yes, tapping into the truth. The thing that I resonate with the Islam and the Muslim, that religion that I've been watching and for whatever reason been guided to watch, is that truth where they're very much everything comes back to source. Everything comes back to source. If I could explain it in a nutshell, that's the thing that I resonate. Everything comes back to source. Everything, what is it? So they say Allah, so God, universe, they say Allah is the giver and the taker of all, right? All the bad stuff that happens, that's Allah. All the good stuff that happens, that's Allah. But he also provides the solution. If this is happening, he's also got the solution already happening. And this is where, that's what I resonate with, right? Whatever we're focusing on, there's always a solution. That even when there's bad stuff going on, there's always a solution, right? It's if that's happening, there's a solution already planned out as well. That, if you want to take anything away from it, and if anything you ask how to prepare, is prepare your mind, your mindset, your deep connection to source. That is how you're going to survive this, right? But not only survive, this is how you're going to come out the other side and thrive in a way that the new earth is preparing, and why all this is happening for humanity in the first place. Like that, it's that. Yeah, 100% it's that. So guys, that is an energy update. I'm sure I'll have more drop-ins and everything will keep piecing together. So if you think that this can help somebody, please share it with them, or share it in a private message to them, tag their name in the comments. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like and subscribe, and if you have any questions even on the replay, please just comment in and I'll come back and check these comments as always. So I shall see you soon.